What's happening, guys? Dan Debenham here, and today we are looking at the best settings for uploading your video to YouTube. Welcome back, guys. Yes, today we are looking at the best settings for uploading your videos to YouTube within Premiere Pro, so let's get into it. Okay, so now that you're into Premiere Pro, make sure that your timeline is selected. We've got a video on here which I shot ages ago for another video. We're going to use this as a template to just show you these settings. So once you're happy with your video and you've got everything you wanted, you make sure that you've got no in and out points selected on your timeline. If you've got in and out points are selected on your timeline like so, it will only export that in and out point. So you want to make sure that if that is what you want in the whole sequence is what you select, which is basically nothing. You just select the timeline. So we go up to export and to file and then export, and then we go to export media. And up comes a screen. In your screen, you'll see another preview window of the video that you've currently got selected, which is your timeline. And you get another timeline along the bottom. That allows you to scrub along your video and select the bit that you want to export. In our instance, we are going to export just a little bit from here. You can set in and out points on it again if you want to. So from that point, what we'll do is we'll scrub to a bit that I like, which is basically this. So we're going to go from there. So we select in. And then I'm going to select out. So we're exporting just a little bit. Okay, up to here, we got the export settings. So you can expand and collapse these. And you can go to match sequence settings if you like, but we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to just select H.264 because that is all you need to export on your video for YouTube. So down here we've got comments. If you want, you can match bitrate if you want to do that. You can. If it's 1080p, then you might as well go for YouTube 1080p Full HD because that's what we're wanting to export it as. You can put a comment in there if you want to. I'll leave that blank. Your output name, that is basically whatever your timeline is called. So my timeline, as you can see from here, it's called MVI 0331. I can change that. If I just scrub across here for a second, I can change that by double clicking on that and renaming it so that is renamed. I haven't in this instance, but if you forget to do that, you can do that here by just clicking on it. It shows you what you want to do. We want to change this out as dog, so we're going to click save as dog, and it's now changed the output file name to dog. We're exporting video and we're exporting audio because in this case that's what we want. So the next thing you've got here is a summary of everything that you're doing. So we've got where it's going to be saved to, what the name is going to be, what the type is going to be, i.e. the format, so it's 1080, 1920 by 1080, it's 23.976 frames a second, which is what it was recorded in, and that's what we want to send it out in. It is progressive, so it's a 1080p rather than 1080i. Incidentally, 1080i is what is used as HD footage for terrestrial TV, like I suggested before, which is BBC, ITV, etc. That's in the UK. Sky, all those systems all use 1080i, 25 frames a second. Interesting fact, HD is actually 1080i on terrestrial TV. So, back to the topic at hand. Right, the next section that we need to know here is we've got a source sequence, so we can see what the source sequence is and they match. So we've got everything is the same. So we know that 48 kilohertz stereo sound, we know we've got 23.976 frames a second, 1920, 1080. So we know that those two things match. So our timeline and our export match in sequence. Next, we've got effects, so we can go for a illuminatory look if we want to, so we can apply a look to it. So let's say we want to go with a clean Fuji look. There you go, you can see you can stick a LUT straight in there if you've forgotten to, or you just want to put a straight LUT over everything you want. So in our instance, let's just select any of these because it doesn't really matter. We don't have to, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can leave these alone. Video, make sure it says 1920 by 1080 if that is what you are exporting to and the frame rate is matched. So you've got the matched frame rate. So we know that we're exporting at one single frame rate of 23.976 frames a second. It's progressive as a field order and the square pixels is square 1. because you don't need to select anything else, you can leave that all. Select maximum render depth because you want everything rendered out as you possibly can. Audio, we'll leave that alone because we want to make sure that it's all the same as what we're exporting as. We've recorded it at 48,000 hertz, so that's what we want to actually export it at. We want it channel stereo. Low is for low quality, medium is for medium quality, high is for high quality. I don't even know why I need to explain that to you. You want it on high every single time if you can. And the bit rate, you just leave it at 320 because that is basically the highest that you can get. So you want it on all those things. You want the precedence to be bit rate, not sample rate, because you want the bit rate to be the highest it can possibly be. Multiplexer, captions and publish. Captions is useful if you have got captions. If you've got captions you want to import and you want to put out as a sidecar file. That will be an extra video that I'll do later down the line on what to do with different types of captions and subtitles and so on and so forth. But you can export files out as a sidecar which allow you to then turn the captions on or off, and it's your own captions built into your timeline across the top of your video that you've manually put into them. That is if you're not using YouTube's auto caption function, which to be fair is if you upload to YouTube, you would do because it does most of the work for you going in and then just altering, which is a later video, I'll put a link to on this here about it calling me different names. So yes, leave that alone. Publish, you don't want to publish it to Creative Cloud unless that's what you actually want to do so people can see it and you can send a link to people. You don't want to publish it to Adobe Stock unless of course you're doing that, or Behance unless of course you're doing that as well. You can send it to an FTP if you want to, so if you want to share it over an FTP so your client can see it, you can do that, put a username and password in, etc., and it will automatically upload it to that FTP. Again, to Twitter and Vimeo and YouTube, etc. You can automatically upload it directly to your YouTube channel by putting in all your playlist, etc., etc., etc. Once you've signed in and you've logged in, you can do that yourself if you want to. I personally don't. What I want to do basically is I want to control where the video goes myself manually, so I will export it directly from Premiere, as we are now, and it'll go into a file, and then all that file is contained with all the assets, etc. And I can save it all, and then I upload it manually to YouTube, set the keywords, etc., etc. That's another video entirely. Okay, so once we've done all that, so you're ignoring you're ignoring multiplexer, you're ignoring captions, you're ignoring publish, you're really ignoring effects as well. You're just using video and audio. Audio you leave as high. Video you want to make sure that it is basically set to maximum render depth. And then as we scroll down to video from maximum render depth, you've got square pixels, maximum render depth, hardware encoding, your profile is high, baseline, main, high, and high hope. Okay, so baseline is low quality, main is basically medium quality, high is high quality, high 10, we don't bother with that. We'll leave it at level 4.2 because that's basically sort of middle of the road. We don't want to be messing around with that either. Next step, this is quite quick. I'm sorry if this is quite quick, but it is quite a lot to get through. Next rate is bit rate encoding. Okay, so we've got three sections in bit rate encoding. We've got CBR, which is constant bit rate. We've got VBR, which is variable bit rate, and we've got VBR2, which is variable bit rate 2 pass. So we've got 1 pass and 2 pass and VBR. So basically constant bit rate is that it will pick a bit rate and it will make that bit rate constant all the way through your video. Variable bit rate is where it will basically look for the parts of the video that are more intensive in movement, and it will vary the bit rate of encoding in order to give more priority to stuff that is more intense on the processor. Variable bitrate 2, which is what we want, that is basically the first bitrate pass, i.e. in VBR1, the first bitrate pass is doing nothing really at all but passing over it and making sure everything's okay. In VBR2, nothing happens in the first pass, so you get 2 passes, it goes through once, it goes through again. The first pass is just checking to see where all the bits are and what it needs to do, so all the really important, really fast moving stuff, all the static images, so a locked off shot where somebody's just stood talking, or you're just looking at an empty building, or you're looking at, you've got a single shot with no movement in it, that will get lower priority, so it'll get lower processing power, averse to something that has got fast moving shots and is moving along at a fair old lick of speed. That will then of course give you more bit rate and it will process faster. So the first section is just running through that and looking at exactly what it wants to do. The second is actually encoding that video into a video format for you. Target bit rate, MBS, and maximum bit rate, MBS. Basically what this is this is the maximum bit rate and the target bit rate that you want it to upload your video to. YouTube will compress your video when you upload it. Ergo, when you upload a really good quality video, it gets slightly less good quality. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select 30 and I'm going to select 50 on this, because what I want to do is I want to make the file larger than it actually needs to be. So the bitrate, the target bitrate is going to be very, very high, and then when they compress it, it's going to be compressed back down to where it roughly should be, so that it's still got a good rate of quality to it. Next set is advanced settings, keyframe distance, and video is VR, etc. That is only useful if you have if you've set a keyframe distance and you want to make sure that there's a specific different distance between everything. VR video is basically, if you're shooting a VR video, then obviously you want to check that so that Premiere knows that it's rendering out a VR video. Next section is maximum render quality. Yes, you want to select that. You don't want to do anything else with that at all. You want to leave it all as is. The frame sampling, etc. Obviously, this is frame blending, frame sampling, and optical flow. That is the transition between each individual frame. And we want to leave that as frame sampling because we want to leave it as close to what we shot as possible. We don't need to smooth it out. So if we smooth it out, we put frame blending or optical flow would smooth out the transitions between each frame. So that will give it some kind of a slight little bit of blur. Basically, it tries to predict what is happening between each frame and then masking in between it so that you've got pixels in between. It's good for fast motion, etc., etc., etc. If you're wanting to do to evoke slow motion and you've not shot it in slow motion, you would do it in optical flow or in frame blending. Use previews, we don't want to do that because that sounds good in theory, but in essence what it's doing is it's using the preview that you've done in your timeline, and your timeline is not always the same settings as what your export is going to be, so that could cause some issues. So what we'll do is uncheck previews and just let it take a little bit longer because it will render each individual frame again off after you've done it on your timeline. And from that point on there, all we need to do is you can add some metadata if you want to. You can stick it in a queue and then carry on editing, and it will then push them all out in one go. You can cancel it because you've wasted your time, you don't want to do any of this, or you can just hit export, and at that point, from export, it will then bring up this bar and start to encode it. And as you can see, it started encoding, it's doing pass 1 of 2, we're at 13%. We're only doing a short little clip, so this shouldn't take a massive amount of time. And it will then do pass 1, and then it will go again and do pass 2, and then after that your video is completed. So I hope those settings were useful for you, and I hope that you got what you needed out of those. They are very, very easy to put together, and it is very simple to do, although the settings can get a little bit confusing if you're not sure where you're going and what you're doing with it. And I hope that was useful to you. If it was, do like and subscribe below for more content and for more interesting vlogs on film, tutorials, on how to edit stuff, and also photography. And I hope to see your smiling little faces again next week.